Jolt Cast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Jolt Cast. Jolt Cast is a casual podcast where we talk about indie games and the Game Jolt community in general. Today we're going to be having an interview and also talking about these four topics: music in video games, large projects and motivation, giving back, and finally, are indie games no longer indie? I'm your host today, Nick Sedan. I make games, websites and music in my free time. I'd like to introduce you to the three people I'm going to be talking with today.
I'm NT. I'm a game developer and technically an author, and I'm the co-host of Jolt Cast. And my Twitter handle is @NathanOrchid.
And Game Jolt's here. I'm Yaprock. I help run Game Jolt, and my Twitter handle is Mask of Thora.
Hey, I am David DeCarmine, also known as Cross, and I made Game Jolt, but I don't really do anything else besides that now. And my Twitter handle is TheChipCross.
Oh my god, we have some celebrities right here. Game Jolt itself. How you guys doing?
Fan-freaking-tastic. Thanks for asking.
I'm doing alright.
Just alright? Come on, man. Yeah, you're Joltcast. It's a momentous time to be alive.
You're on one of the most prestigious podcasts there is.
Yeah, it's just too much for me to comprehend.
So today we have four really cool talks, and we've also asked the community for some questions that we're going to ask David and Yaprak. Today the talks are going to be music in video games, large projects and motivation, giving back, and are indie games no longer indie? So, first of all, we're going to be asking David and Yaprak some questions. We've gathered them from the community. I have filtered the inappropriate ones out, I'm sorry. But we're going to try and keep this, safe for work. So, this is the first question, and I thought it was probably the best question to start it off. Why the name Game Jolt?
Let's see, I came up with the name. It used to be called Hollow World, and then there was another site called Mac Fixation that did Mac games. Hollow World did PC games, like freeware games, and then we kind of joined forces, which really meant that Mac Fixation kind of folded into what would become Game Jolt, and I had to come up with a new name, and I have no idea why I chose Game Jolt, because it sounded cool. And I was young.
Come on, you're gonna have an epic backstory. It was one day on a dark and stormy night, a mysterious old man came up to me and whispered two words: Game Jolt. And that's it.
Yeah, maybe we should start lying about it.
Yeah. Or like maybe you were walking down the street and accidentally tripped and fell in toxic waste.
Doesn't it have to involve... It's got to be a lightning bolt that hit me or something. It can't just be toxic sludge, if that's going to be the story.
Oh, I guess that makes more sense, yeah.
It's going to be the new next summer blockbuster, Game Jolt, a Marvel Cinematic production.
Yeah, when there's a Game Jolt movie, that'll be the origin.
Oh yeah, actually, that's a good question to start off now. David and Yaprak, who would you have portray you in the Game Jolt movie?
Oh man, I would choose, for me, probably Yaprock.
Really?
Yeah.
I would actually choose Nick Sedan. I feel like we look pretty similar. So, especially the facial hair.
Both sound the same.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty...
Right. Well, I'm gonna try and get that mental image out of my head now. So this is another kind of development question, I guess. What was the biggest struggle whilst developing Game Jolt?
Getting people to understand what I was trying to do with the site. I think a lot of developers still don't understand it, or the idea was almost too big, especially at the time. I really wanted to build something that was able to push the idea of individuals making games, a very personal kind of development style. Anyone can make a game, anyone can put out a game. And I think, that was definitely the biggest struggle, is trying to get people to see that, that was Game Jolt's goal, is to help indies out, to like, if we can all kind of grow it together, it would be something that would, potentially help everyone. But then for development, man, I don't know, probably rewriting the site was the hardest thing I've ever done. That killed me.
Yeah, it was pretty intense, wasn't it?
Yeah, that sucked.
You did a good job of it.
Thanks. Well, it was hard with the launch because, I think both of you, I know Nick was around. I think you were around then too, right? Like,
yeah, but not as heavily or frequently.
okay, yeah. So like the relaunch, just since it was different, there was a lot of people saying pretty nasty things about it, which was, I think most of them got comfortable with it, and now I think all I hear really is positive feedback about it. But kind of hardworking, like nonstop, for months rewriting something, and then you launch it. And, yeah,
it's always the case, really, especially with YouTube and its format. I remember when you first, when it first went live, I dedicated the Game Jolt Gold Twitter account for new site feedback, specifically the negative feedback. And if you scroll through it, you should be able to find some of that stuff. It's pretty funny. Looking back then, the kind of people who are saying that.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, you're the kind of person who's actually listening to this. I'm sorry.
What's amazing is that how ruthless people were within the community itself. Instead of just giving constructive feedback, it was this sucks, you suck, everything sucks, kill yourself.
Well, even they weren't even always some of the younger people that use Game Jolt, or it was some actual indies, that were just well, Game Jolt's shit now. They're oh, come on. Give something better than that. I can't do anything with that.
It's the same people that complain when they get those type of comments on their games, but they also give those comments out.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, some struggles.
I was gonna say, those comments just welcome to the internet.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Trying to find some of those opinions now. I've been scrolling through the Game Jolt Gold Twitter.
Oh, you gotta go to 2014.
Oh, I found it. Yeah, I found it now. Right. Well, who made this update and why? This update is worse than a Roblox update.
I there was what was it? So many people that were saying can you just change it back, And it's I don't think you know what you're asking. Well, first off, the old site looked like butt, but second of all, you don't just change it back after you migrate all the code, the database and everything. Now we're gonna change it back. Or can you just have two, both versions? No.
That's how it works.
You want the old version, you can go onto that archives. It archives all the web pages.
Yeah, you should offer the very, very first version of it and now, and then see how.
I keep wanting to do that for April Fools, but it's just too much work.
Okay, so here's some more. Game Jolt evolved into Hipster Jolt.
What?
Kids in Africa could have eaten those hypes.
Oh.
Those heights.
The new design for the site is strange. Where is the #FNAF part? The new layout is good, but it's also horrible.
No, honestly, it's pretty cool because I feel we're growing a generation of people who are comfortable with change now, all because of Game Jolt.
That's an idea. If you guys want to do that, then just change the site every month.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, haven't I been doing that?
Oh, yeah, fair enough. I guess it does update pretty regularly.
So moving on to next question. What is planned for future Game Jolt features and improvements?
Oh, they're all secret.
Anything you can tell us?
They will mostly be community oriented. Basically, what we're trying to do with Game Jolt is to get everyone involved and really build the community aspect of it. So we want to bring in everyone that's within gaming, whether it's Let's Players, whether it's just gamers, developers. Like, we just want to unite everyone and form like this awesome, loving, supportive community.
Nice.
But I want to improve profiles. But I need people's suggestions and feedback as to what they want first.
Yeah, you heard the man. Give him some feedback.
Yeah, so give me feedback. Tell me everything. Yeah, and then there's a lot of other things to like consolidate some of the features kind of back into the site. So like we have Fireside, I'd like to get that open and usable by everyone. But to do that, I want to get it into like GameJolt.com rather than its own kind of separate site. And kind of integrate the jam system more into the site would be nice. Things like that.
Nice. So, last question, and probably the most important one. Is Cross an actual guy?
Doesn't matter.
Oh.
What a way to end it. Right, so moving on now to the discussion topics. First of all, I will start off. My talk is going to be about music in video games. So this is a pretty important topic for me because I am a musician. I compose music in my free time as commissions for other people and for myself. I spend a lot of my time, probably I spent more of my life making music than I have programming, which is pretty big, I guess, but recently, because I've just been focusing on game development, web development and stuff, just music has taken a back seat. And I guess like when it comes to video games, it's a really great application because most applications in the industry just with their buttons, their forms, their tables, just maybe some images there and there, but they don't really express themselves as much as a game can. A game can have like 3D artwork, 2D artwork, music, just like can really convey some feelings. And I feel music does that a lot. However, I don't think most game developers in the industry, the indie industry, don't take it as serious as they should. I feel music is a very important part of making a game, and I feel like if most developers treated it like they would as with the art, with the programming, you can get some really, really good sounding and good feeling games. What are your thoughts?
My thought is that if you take music out of a game, is it still a game? The answer is yes. If you take programming out of a game, is it still a game? But, ponder that for a little while.
Oh, snap.
God damn it.
I'd
I'd argue that you're not a musician, but I know you are, so my point's invalid there. What are you going to say, NT?
I think if you took the programming out of a game, it might just be a picture at that point, if all you're left with is graphics. But in terms of sound and what you're actually talking about,
have you had a look at the FNAF? If you had a look at the FNAF fan games, they don't have any programming.
Alright, fair, okay. But yeah, with sound and music in games, and I'm guilty of this. Well, I used to be. I've since learned stuff with experience. But I used to always leave it to the end. It would just be like, sounds don't matter that much. I could just add those in at the end and it'll be fine. Which isn't true. I think it's more important to sort of add them in as you go, or at least concept them and experiment with what you have as you're making it, because sounds make things come alive that extra bit. Like, some people mute the sound, sure, but they're really just ruining their own experience at that point, because as long as it's good sound design, like, the game world is suddenly a lot more alive. Instead of just seeing things happen, you can now hear them as well, which is that extra bit, and makes things that extra bit more believable. And good music helps there too, because you can set the tone of a game. Like, you can have really bright colors and something happy happening on the screen. But then if you put like dark music behind that, it changes the tone completely.
I think it's kind of interesting though, because I think people are trying to like innovate with sound and music in games because it's not been something I think that it is focused on as much compared to something like 3D graphics and in mainstream gaming, right? So now it's like, oh, we have like prime opportunity to actually innovate with sound or music, right? And I feel like a lot of it's just becoming like procedural music. Like that's the innovation that they came up with. But I think it's, I don't know, like for me, that's still not that interesting, honestly. So I don't know if you're like familiar with The Wire, the TV series The Wire.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so like it's really interesting how they did the sound design of that, because you never hear music or sounds or anything unless it's part of the scene. So they only, if you hear like music, it'll be coming from like a boombox or like a car radio or whatever, and it'll actually sound like where it's coming from, right? So for them to insert music into the scenes, they actually had to think of the placement, like where they were going to put the music. I think stuff like that is actually kind of interesting because that plays out more like real life, right? When's the last time you had this epic soundtrack as you're killing orcs? Well, I don't know when you've killed orcs, but like when I have, there's been no soundtrack. So, yeah, I could see like innovation more in that area, honestly, with sound design and music, because I think it might actually feel like more raw, more realistic, especially with maybe even VR, you know?
That fits in a bit with what I was saying before with bringing the world to life more, because if you put the audio source as an actual thing within the game, then it's not just like music coming from the gods at that point. It's like actually coming from the game world. Like if you put a boombox in the game and have the audio emit from there, that sort of adds an extra layer of immersion to the game world.
Yeah, and I would argue, I guess this is kind of bad since this is somewhat talking about music, but I would argue that sound is maybe even more important than music in a game, because when you have music, you can actually cover bad sound design pretty easily. Whereas if you rely less on music, you actually really have to be focusing on, do these sounds like evoke the emotions just from being themselves, right? That you're trying to get out of somebody.
If you like, you could choose to opt out of music completely and still have like a good sounding game, because I mean in real life you don't have background music all the time behind you unless you've got like a radio on or something. So as long as you've got good sound design, like you can set up the game world to sound like a world, like, you know, be that birds in the background or wind in the trees or whatever. Like music, I think music is often used to fill in the gaps where people don't want to do like wind or birds chirping, that sort of stuff. It sort of like adds that bit of sound where otherwise there would be none.
Well, yeah, I would kind of define music as not just like stuff written by a piano and all that stuff, but just kind of just atmospheric sound in general. Like not like you got your feedback sound, like when you shoot the gun you want that really hard retro crunchy kind of shotgun sound. But like, yeah, as you're saying, walking around hearing bird song or the wind, or like if it's walking past the radio and hearing just the track, like that really conveys a feeling lots more than if you decided not to have it in. And going back to The Wire, like you said, like I haven't really watched it, but I can imagine when scenes get really like serious or intense, like people are just glued because it's comparable to real life.
Yeah, it's almost like uncomfortable, and like they used it really, really well because it almost feels too real when you're watching it, right? Like it feels very raw, like you're part of what's happening. And I think partly it's because of that lack of music, and or if there is music, it's actually like believable music, of course. So.
I think music can be really important, actually, like especially when it comes to horror games. Like oftentimes you're like lurking around some sketchy hallway, and like the music really builds up like the scene, and without it, it wouldn't have been as scary. So I think I don't know, maybe it depends on the type of game, but I think it can really add to the experience.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Definitely.
I think
like horror games.
I could see that. I actually more uncomfortable when horror games don't have any music.
I was just about to say, like, a good way to sort of have music within the world in a horror game is like a children's toy going off in a room somewhere, like in a dark room, and then you hear like this happy singing, or like a toy fire truck coming off, like going off or something. Like when it's directional and everything, it really sort of like where's that sound coming from? You know, it gets the heart racing.
Yeah, I think like with those kind of games, you have to keep this fine balance of keeping the person kind of immersed, but also throwing stuff at them that they aren't expecting. Mm-hmm. So like if you just played like you're playing a horror game and then you just heard like the Rick Astley come on, you'd be like, what? And then you just laugh, and then like the monster might come out and you're just like, oh, there's a monster. Like
yeah, at that point, yeah.
With the kids, like the kids singing and all that stuff, it's like you're immediately drawn to it, and then like, but you're still like really tense, really uncomfortable. It helps with the moment even more because you weren't expecting it, but it's not like it comes as a shock to you. It's kind of like a gradual realization.
Yeah, but like, could you imagine playing Diablo without the music? You know what I mean? Like whenever I think of Diablo, I just remember like the catacombs and like the music. So
it's just like it would just be cookie clicker, wouldn't it?
Cookie clicker. Yeah, I mean, all that being said, I only really brought that up as like innovation in or potential innovation in the space. Not necessarily that all games need to like something weird like that, right? Because I mean, I still listen to soundtracks from games that I played when I was younger. Like they've, affected me enough that I can still go back to them and listen to them and feel the emotions I felt while playing the game, right?
Yeah, you sort of link the music to the experience you had, and sort of solidifies the memory in your head a bit.
That's a good point. Yeah. So it's not kind of. You don't notice it at the start. Like you might say, oh, the soundtrack's really catchy, but to be honest, when you're listening to music or when you're doing something, you have the tune stuck in your head. Like this thing about music, it's so different from like natural speech or just actions. It really gets in the nooks and crannies of your brain and just sticks in there. Like if I asked you, describe World 5-3 on the original Super Mario Bros. And you're like, what? And then if I told you recite music from that level, and the game in general, and you'd just be like, yeah, I know it. So yeah, the music definitely pinpoints on. It could be the game in general, or it could just be certain pinpoint parts of the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. Like, I mean, if you think, oh, I've got to study for this maths test, like, I mean, for me personally, like, you've got people out there with photographic memories, but I feel like the average person might struggle to memorize different questions and stuff. But then you ask them to learn the lyrics to a song, and a lot of people could like listen to a song like 5 times, if that, and then know all the lyrics, like, and just remember them forever from that point. It's like music has this strange ability to get stuck in your head, and I personally find it really easy to like remember tunes and beats and like lyrics to songs, which could be good for games, because if you can remember music that easily, I mean, if the music is good, then you might tell people about it, which can help give the game itself a better name.
Yeah, and so like, I think it, going back to like my previous point of like, maybe what I don't like about it is, or the current state is that I feel like a lot of times what people will do is like what NT said is, you know, you build kind of the game, you build the levels, you build the world, then you add the music. And so at that point, there's almost an expectation that you need music in different parts. Like, okay, for this world we need music, for the title screen we need music, for the menu we need music, for all these places we need music. And then all that you're really coming up with is like, well, what kind of emotion should the music evoke in this world or this level or this part, right? And I think it could be cool because like the world is kind of musical anyway with just sounds. So like, I think like the thinking of like, okay, maybe this part of the game involves just these sounds in the environment. So how can the music blend with those sounds to like make you, I don't know, bring it more to life? It'd be cool, stuff like that. So like constantly trying to blend things together with, sounds, or, you know, do we even need music here? Can it just rely on like amazing sounds?
I'm gonna cut us there, and we're gonna move on to the next topic.
Wait, we gotta talk about Game Jolt FM though.
You can go on, do your plug now for it.
All right, this is the perfect opportunity to mention that if you'd like to just listen to soundtracks of games on Game Jolt, you totally can by going to
gamejolt.com/radio. And if you're a developer, you should also consider putting up your music if you're fine with people listening to it without buying the game or stuff like that.
Yeah, I've done it to a bunch of my soundtracks, and it's pretty cool. Like, just putting on that on random, like, you'll get all sorts of stuff. Like, you'll get some like really creepy cinematic, then you get some like, don't know, just like some absolutely mental electronic mix, and then you'll get just some just someone screaming for 3 seconds. it's absolutely crazy, random, and I love it. So you should check it out.
Is it like a radio station where you just listen to whatever you get and that's it, or like are you able to skip tracks if you want?
You skip, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Right, so let's move on. So this next topic is large projects and motivation, and NT, you are going to talk this one.
Yeah, so I myself am working on a pretty big project at the moment. It's been going on for a bit over a year now, and it's slow, tedious work. It's because the bigger a project gets, the more things that break, and it just gets slower and slower as it seems. And I've found that with that comes motivation issues. I've never done a project this big before, so I'm not used to spending this long and dedicating this much time to just one game. And when you're working on something for that long, it can get boring at times, because it's always like that's your main focus. It's just like this one thing over and over again. And I sort of wanted to talk about ways of getting the motivation back, or like managing your interests and trying to stay motivated with your projects in order to actually finish them. It's a pretty well-known thing within the indie game industry that finishing projects can be hard. Like, I don't think I know any game developers that don't have like a billion other projects just like sitting around on their computer that they've just left there because they got bored of it.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, like I've got on an old hard drive, like probably around 200 old Game Maker projects just sitting there doing nothing.
Oh jeez.
So do you guys have any tips or tricks in terms of staying motivated or anything like that?
I think I would say the biggest thing is to try and get as many people involved in what you're doing, and then it kind of like hypes you up. Like I feel like if you're explaining your project to someone or asking for feedback or just even talking about it, you're gonna come up with new and better ideas, and it will give you some sort of motivation.
Yeah, so like, let's see, Game Jolt has been the biggest project for me that I've worked on, personally. So, I mean, I've been doing Game Jolt for over 8 years, right? So, it's kind of a long freaking project. And so I think, some of the tricks with motivation is, websites are a little different than games in that a website you can get out pretty fast, I would say, like an initial version, and then you just keep iterating on it, right? Whereas a game, traditionally, I guess, development could be years, and then you launch it, and that's like everything you're working towards is that one launch, right? But that means you have years to just get demotivated or whatever. And so maybe chunking it up into projects, right? Because this way, rather than thinking about the whole game, you're like, oh man, if I could just get this one project done, it's gonna be freaking awesome, right?
That makes sense.
Because that's kind of how Game Jolt development goes. We like do a project. It's always going to be the coolest thing ever once we get this project done, whether or not that's true. That's how I feel. So it actually motivates me to get the project done, right? And then my problem is that I hop onto another project way too fast. I keep wanting to do like another project on Game Jolt. But so with games, the way that can translate is maybe like devlogs or early access could be really cool. Like Yaprock was saying, if you can loop people in and then kind of structure it out into projects that you can then show people after you do them, that can actually, it could be really good for motivation.
And you can create a devlog on Game Jolt.
Yeah.
That's plug number 65 today. Jeez, guys, like it's like you're on like a Game Jolt podcast. What is it?
It's like we're running a site or something.
Yeah.
Super weird. In terms of roping people in, I think developers should embrace streaming a bit more. Because more and more people are becoming interested in game development, especially indie development, because it's a personal opinion, but I often find more interesting things going on in indie games than I do in AAA. And things like streaming on Twitch allow you to build up an audience of people, not just for a specific game, but for yourself. And if you keep streaming, like, relatively regularly, then those people keep coming back, and then they can tell other people about your game as you're making it, and you gain feedback as you're making it. Sometimes you even get help in making it, like if you're stuck on an error, someone might just happen to see your code while you're writing it and point it out to you, which could or could not be beneficial. A good example of that is Vlambeer. I think they used to do a weekly Twitch stream or something along those lines. I know they streamed a fair bit of Nuclear Throne development, and they actually embraced the subscriber mechanism for Twitch and allowed people to buy the game through subscribing to their Twitch channel from memory.
Yeah, like just going back to just more developers should. Well, it's definitely tons more interesting. Like I'm a big fan of some games. Like I really like Team Fortress, Overwatch, The Legend of Zelda. But when it comes to those games development, I barely know anything, and AAA companies don't really kind of advertise as much as they could really regarding development. They kind of keep it all secret, and then they kind of just tell you stuff when it's just about to come out or something. And I feel like that mentality has gotten a hold of a lot of indie game developers. And then they're saying, like, it's understandable for some games, like if it's a very story-driven game, you don't want to give out too much, but you shouldn't be silent, because like you want it to be a surprise and all that. But going back to the first point you made was you need to get a fan base, essentially grow a community, and that is the biggest motivation. And there is no excuse for why people should not post content about their game to the public, to Twitter, the communities, whether it be just a screenshot or a soundtrack snippet, maybe some like a gif of just like a scene that maybe even no gameplay at all, just the scene, just like the grass flowing in the wind or something like that. Like if it's a very heavily like story-driven game with spoilers, just totally free like that, you're going to build up loads of hype for people, and you're going to see that response, and you're going to go, wow, I need to finish this.
Yeah,
I think
it sounds a lot like devlogs.
I think
like devlogs is like, well, on the site they help definitely a lot more because they drag the users of the site into it, because previously it was kind of a what you see is what you get kind of mentality, really. It's in games and development, most kind of the general perception of it was, why can't I play it? But now people can actually show what
and so
a lot of people are warming up.
What's funny actually is I think the fan game community on Game Jolt does it best, and I really don't know why. Like I guess some of the bigger indies that are doing their own stuff, I think for some reason might have more of that mentality of like, well, I'm going to be working on this game for a long time. I should only really show things when, it's ready or whatever. But if you look at how the fan game community on Game Jolt does it, they show freaking everything. And it actually hypes up, everyone gets hyped up like, oh my gosh, this is going to be awesome, And they don't even have anything to show really. And then they'll put out like, like a bunch of posts of, oh, I'm working on it. But yeah, it's kind of cool to... surprisingly, they kind of use devlogs the best, but I think it keeps their motivation going. Like, there's like a very supportive community that can happen if you just go off what you're working on.
I think one thing that might lead to the fan game makers doing it a bit better is because it's a fan game. Well, I don't think they're scared of spoiling things as much, because it's a fan game, so typically it contains many of the same features as the original game with maybe a few differences here and there. So the game itself, they're like, this is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game, so you typically know what you're getting before it's done. They just have to add their own innovations here and there, so I think there's less fear of spoiling the game before they release it, before people play it. But on that note, that's not necessarily a good excuse not to share games, because for smaller developers such as myself, without money to pay for things like advertising schemes and stuff, when you do just release a game, it becomes important to build up the audience before the game is released and get people excited before it's finished, because that way you've got all these people waiting on this thing that you're making because you've already hyped them up, you've already shown them all these cool features, and they're excited to get into the game and try them out, which is obviously helpful in creating a successful game. And when you've also got all these people behind you and commenting and giving feedback on everything you're making and hopefully showing that they're excited, that gets you more excited and more pumped up to get it done and to get it out to them. It's sort of like their excitement becomes the motivation. I started posting onto Instagram lately, and I've had a fair few people on there be like, oh, this looks really cool, or this looks really well made, or really keen to see the final result. And I know that for me at least, definitely motivates me to work a bit harder and put more time into it.
My advice would be to not worry about spoiling your game, because I think it's really important to try and show off your game as much as possible. And if people think that, I don't think people will not play your game because they feel like they've seen it. If that was the case, then Let's Players wouldn't be popular. Like people like watching the game or knowing about a game and they still want to try it for themselves. So yeah, my advice would be to put out as many gifts and show off the cool stuff like as much as you can.
Yeah, and like kind of not stopping once the development is completed as well. That's a big thing as well, because when you're making the game, the community and your fans of your game are the biggest kind of inspiration for you to finish, and ultimately you get a better product at the end. But then it doesn't stop there. Like you might be you might see it as like, once I'm done with this, that's it, that's my game development kind of fun time over, and that was a nice experience. But it might evolve into something else. Like you might spin off into doing some updates to it, sequels, maybe even more games, or maybe even collaborations. So it is important to keep on working on your game, because like even the post kind of hype can be an inspiration for making more games. Like one good example of like a post hype thing you can get is like something like the Jolties. So for those of you who aren't aware what the Jolties is, it's a community-run event on Game Jolt where developers and gamers can submit their game, and the community will vote for what's their favorite game and what's the best category and stuff. And like if you get like top of that, well, you've pretty much been awarded like best game. You can't get better than that, and that's a great feeling. So you should just always keep on working. Don't abandon your project. Take a break if you need to. Breaks are, I'd say, are really important for keeping motivated. Don't burn yourself out on it.
I do have one other thing. So I think development is actually a really lonely process a lot of times. So I would recommend finding a meetup in your area and joining it. And like usually they have nights where everyone brings what they're working on, and like everyone shows off, and you get to play other people's games and they get to play yours, and you all provide feedback. I think stuff like that can also really help with motivation. If you feel like you're the only one just plugging away day to day, it could be really lonely as an indie. But I think, yeah, there's like a lot of support from other indies out there, and just seeing what other people are working on, I think, motivates me a lot. So
yeah, I definitely get motivated by other people's work as well. Like I might be slacking off a bit and then see a YouTube video of someone's cool game, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna get to work. I want to make something cool too. It sort of pushes me to strive a bit more. What you were saying with indie dev being lonely, I can definitely agree with that. I don't know of any other indie dev within like an hour or two of like where I live, which is another reason why Game Jolt's so good, is because of the chat there. You sort of, there's a lot of people to talk to. It's not quite the same as being there physically with people. I think I'd still prefer to have some sort of meetup location, like is it the arcade in Melbourne? Yeah, like that's a really cool thing that they're doing down there, where you can actually go and like meet up with people, and like you were saying, like when you're playing other people's games or they're playing yours and getting feedback or giving feedback, it's definitely a huge motivation boost. And in terms of getting burnt out, game jams are really good for refreshing yourself a bit. You just take a few days, work on something else, make something interesting, something cool. Some of those features you might even think they'll work in your main project, or like you'll get new ideas from that. So if you're ever feeling burnt out, I definitely recommend doing a game jam to try and help refresh yourself a bit.
Alright, cool. So next talk is going to be by Yaprat, simply titled Giving Back.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about how people can give back to the indie community, like mostly bigger developers or ones that have found success. I feel like just going to a lot of conferences these past 2 years, it's awesome that they're there, but like I find that they're unapproachable, or like they're not actually there to talk to like the smaller developers or people, enthusiasts, or really anyone. Like they're just kind of off on stage, or are like swarmed by people. So I feel like the community could really use a good way to reach them and speak with them. And I don't really know like how we can make that happen. There's like when we lived in Austin, there was a meetup, like an indie meetup that we'd go to, but even there, like it just didn't really feel like people could talk to one another. It was like if you know your group of people, then you hang out and you talk with them. So I think the community could really benefit from being more approachable and having those bigger folks like pass down wisdom and advice and give back.
It's more. Like it's the thing where you can learn from other people's mistakes. Like people, like if you're planning on doing a Steam release, people have done that already and they know the struggles. They can have advice on how to make that kind of thing easier. Like you can learn so much from bigger indie developers, because chances are they've run into the same problems that you either are running into or may potentially run into, or things that you're worried about. So being able to talk to the people that have already done it means that you can reduce your own risk, because they would have already made mistakes and they can give advice on how to avoid them. And you can basically just learn from them. A good example of someone you can learn from is Rami Ismail. People have different opinions on him, but one thing that he does, and that I've been a part of it a few times now, is he does his I think it's called Talk to Me Ismail show on Twitch.
Yeah, it's Call Me Ismail.
Yeah, and literally what that is he starts up a stream, gets on Skype, and then anyone and everyone can just call him on Skype and talk to him and promote their game or ask for advice. And I've done that myself a few times, and it's really good. You just have a chat to him. He's run into plenty of issues within the game development world, and he's also open to trying out your games and providing feedback. I think if more developers were able to do that kind of thing, maybe not in that form, but definitely, like, it's a good way to give back and help out within the game development community.
I think this might be a result of, I guess, me being... The way I've been involved in the indie community is very, like, I guess, underground kind of indie stuff, where, anyone's making any. Traditionally, I've just been involved in, like, freeware stuff. Which is kind of a different realm than, like, indies trying to make money and a living. But anyway, what I've noticed a lot of times is people like that have made it, let's say, a lot of times I would consider their advice not that great, because they're speaking from their point of view and they're not speaking from the point of view of someone that hasn't made it yet. And their path of making it very oftentimes involves either luck, or it involves their specific personality, which no one's going to be able to mimic unless they're that kind of person, which maybe I would say is Rami. Like, Rami is very good at what he does. And yeah, I think that's like some of that is like a unique skill that he has as a person, right? So yeah, so like A really good example, and this is, again, maybe just from my point of view. I've heard stuff like, oh, don't use Game Jolt, do it on your own. Like, which is really weird because not everyone has 10,000 people following them on Twitter, Not everyone has connections to all the press, Like, not everyone has the ability to just say something and then get covered by everyone, right? In fact, most of the indies are starting from nothing, starting from nowhere. Like, even Jan was already like he was already pretty prominent in the indie scene as like a small, or maybe not even that small, but like as a developer making a ton of prototypes and small games and stuff, right? But a lot of indies are starting off from nothing. So, I think a lot of times their advice maybe isn't the best, and I think it would be better if maybe the bigger indies realized their positions and how they are different, and what works for them might not necessarily work for someone just starting out.
Yeah, I feel like valuable advice from bigger indie is more like how they deal with legal stuff, or like stuff that every indie is going to experience, versus like how to be popular and like how to be rich or something.
Or
rather than stuff that people want to hear, stuff
or even like how many people giving talks and stuff at events are doing it to help out, or are they doing it just for the name recognition because somebody told them that they should be talking at events so that they can become a bigger indie? Right?
That's a good point. Like when I've been to some developer talks, I follow the talker on Twitter, and like as developers, as a person, they're really cool, but like as a developer, they're like pretty average. Like some like most smaller developers do a better job at Twitter than them. So it's just like, you might have good points to get across, but in the end, it's like, I think a lot are using it as like a promotion tactic rather than actually getting in and focusing on information people need to hear. One thing I want to bring up is, Yapper, you did an interview, didn't you, with Sam and Christian who did Barbarian?
I did an interview with those guys, and it was awesome because I met them at Rezzed in London, and we were just having beers, and they were just talking to me about their experience on, like getting on Steam, and how like the work just does not end there. Like it's getting on Steam does not equal like immediate success. And we were talking about how like a lot of people think that like if they can just get greenlit, then they can just roll in money. And it was, and it's not even close. Getting on Steam at this point is a requirement. And what I tell every developer that I meet is you need to get on every single platform. Like you just do. That's how you spread news about your game. That's how people get to know your game. Because sites like Game Jolt and Steam and IndieDB, like they all have different demographics. Some overlap, but a lot don't. So you really need to push your game everywhere. But going back to those guys, like they get creative to really promote their game, and they have to. Like it's a pretty awesome article. I mean, they give you advice on what you should be doing before even getting greenlit, and I think
like if you haven't read that, you should really check it out.
The biggest takeaway is like you need a budget, because you're still gonna have to go to shows and exhibit, and you need to be looking for those type of opportunities where maybe you can do it for free. So yeah, like getting on Steam is not it's not the answer to all your problems.
This kind of fits in with the whole giving back thing. Networking in the indie scene is huge. Like, it's a very show and tell style industry where people are always showing each other things, and the more people you know, the I guess I'm gonna say the more people you can use, but like don't just like treat them as tools, you know, make friends, don't make tools. But like a lot of the time I find indies are willing to help each other because we all have the same kind of goal, you know, we all wanna make it more or less, we all wanna make a cool game, and the more people you know, the more resources you have access to, the more people you can contact if you do need help. Like, you can't always make it to events. So what Game Jolt did at GDC was really cool because you gave a lot of people the opportunity to have their games displayed at a big event. Like, even if they couldn't make it there themselves, like that's an opportunity that they might not have had otherwise. So, like that kind of thing, you know, being involved in communities like that can provide really good opportunities for that kind of thing.
And I got one last thing. So
is there no? Okay, go on.
I think. All right, my thinking is a little crazy, but I think the best thing that I would say that some of the bigger indies can do to help out is, one thing I see a lot in the industry is there's like this weird concept of what are like the legit indies or the hip indies, and then we should all look up to them, and everyone just wants to be part of that group, right? And I think that's like not that good. It's kind of weird, honestly. What I think, I guess some of the more prominent people that people are looking up to, if they spoke out more against like against that specific thing, like no, like bigger indies shouldn't be like idolized. This shouldn't just be about like, you know, selling, you know, millions of copies of your game, and then, or you know, everyone else should just be like listening to these pop indies. It should be much more of encouraging gamers, even like encouraging press, encouraging reviewers, like find smaller indie games, find like the weird innovative stuff that's happening, like spread out more, because if we just focus on the top of the pyramid, like it's not going to be sustainable for more people. It'll only be sustainable for the top. So like, yeah, I don't know. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see those people kind of at the top of our industry to be encouraging gamers, let's players, reviewers, press, like anyone, find the weird stuff, because there's like really, really cool stuff out there from pretty unknown developers. They're doing, you know, like think about gaming differently. It doesn't have to just be what you think gaming is now. Like gaming can be different, can be very chaotic even. I like chaos.
And like one person can't come up with all the ideas. Like, yeah, you might have like you might have really good polished your games. The first couple of games might have really good ideas. You might really innovate what it means to be an indie game. But you know, like the freshest ideas are in that small weird stuff, and that you get the best experience from if you find that perfect game in there. Let's move on to our final topic then. So this is are indie games no longer indie? Also known as, does it matter? Take it away.
Yeah, so anyway, when I kind of got into things, I didn't even know indie games existed. To me, it was like, I had this weird idea, or I thought it was a weird idea that, you know, I loved playing games. I really wanted to make games, as I think a lot of young gamers feel. And so I was like, hey, it'd be awesome if there was a way, like a platform almost, where anyone can make a game and put it up, and there'd be a way to like get an audience and traffic, and then almost like this new concept in gaming, right? And then, yeah, I was pretty young at the time, and then I looked in and I was like, oh, it's called indie games. So that to me is like one of the coolest thing about indie games is actually that piece of it. The fact that it's like, you know, really small teams of people able to actually like make a game. It's insane, especially nowadays where like teams are over 100 people, right? For AAA games. So
Yeah.
so what I've been seeing is like it's really cool because, you know, I started a long time ago in indie games, trying to improve the situation, I guess, to get gamers playing more of that stuff. And but now what you see is, since, you know, a lot of indies have done a lot of work to try to break into like the mainstream gaming industry, to get gamers playing more indie games, you know, and it's kind of working now. Like, indie games are a thing, even that word. And so, yeah, I guess I wanted to discuss with everyone. Because of that, our indie games now are much more, they're actually pretty close to like AAA games now. So have we lost that idea of some of those small games that you know we used to play on, that like people would post to forums, or like the GMC, or like, you know, Yo-Yo Games is gone, all these things where you know, I guess Game Jolt's still around with a huge amount of stuff like that, but is the interest lost, you know? Because now indie games mean something else, potentially.
Yeah, I got a point I can make about this. So, back then, back in the 1800s, when you were a kid, you old man. No, just joking. Back then, I'd say, because making a game in your own free time as an indie game dev, it was not common at all. Like, you wouldn't find, like, if you go around asking everyone in computing class that kind of liked to like go a bit more, like a bit further into it, they probably wouldn't. People wouldn't do that. They like to play some of the games on consoles, maybe some like on the PC and stuff, but that's it really. And that's, I think, because it was pretty hard for people to make games, so you'd get very short experiment type games. And if you were in that community, like, I think going back to what you described, it's kind of like an underground community. Like, you felt like it was on like a personal level, really, rather than just like a generalized just level that it is today. And I feel like with the evolution of technology, like computers nowadays are stupidly fast. Software, you can make anything, and programming is taught regularly in schools and is promoted by a lot of people now. And it's changed the you kind of perception of how people kind of look at indie games now. Like you said, it can be a negative because you don't get that underground feeling anymore, and to be honest, you probably won't unless you go into a very certain subgenre of a subgenre or something like that. But you should I think people should be there pretty grateful, because they can have a much bigger outcome at the end of the day. And let's say they get like 3 people playing their game and they go like, oh my god, there's no one playing it. Back in the day, like if you just play some underground games, if you got like a play, you just like, oh my god, who played this? Oh my god, I love them. I play. So yeah, I think because technology is evolving, more people have access to kind of playing games and making games. People are expecting more now, and that it's just kind of made it more of a mainstream kind of feeling.
Well, what's kind of interesting though is like that's not how the whole industry is though, I think, because this affects Game Jolt a lot, but YouTubers actually play like those weird games. Like YouTubers very often are the ones finding and playing smaller games or experimental games, or even just crazy games. you know, that just are absurd, you know. And it's kind of interesting because to me that shows that gamers enjoy this stuff. Like, but when's the last time that like any sort of gaming site covered stuff like that? I think it's pretty rare and pretty, you know, like the games that they're going to be covering are those like bigger indie games or like a controversial small game, right? But like, but it's weird because it seems kind of, I don't know, kind of sucky.
I kind of feel the reason for that is like the mainstream's sudden interest in like indie games. Like I think it totally drives that. Like I feel when you go to GDC or even Develop, like you start seeing people like Microsoft just really pushing indie, you know? So, and I feel like the type of games that Microsoft probably wants to fund or support is going to be like a lot of the bigger, like longer games.
I think another reason for YouTubers being the ones to go out and find those games is, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed people seem to be getting bored with AAA because a lot of companies have gone ahead and developed franchises and keep making like a new Call of Duty or a new Battlefield or whatever and reusing old ideas, but sort of like a lot of it's like using the same kind of mechanics with maybe a new thing here and there, but with a different story. And people seem to be getting bored. And in terms of being a YouTuber, I think it used to be more AAA games were being played in Let's Plays, but with people getting bored of that kind of stuff, they're in a way forced to go out and find different things because they need to entertain people, because that's how a lot of them are making their money. So if they don't get the views and if people don't like the videos, then they're in trouble. So they've got to go out and find all these interesting and weird indie games for the entertainment value, because people are getting bored of Call of Duty, they're bored of Battlefield, they're bored of all those AAA franchises, because in a way, like, a lot of it is the same kind of thing, which is another reason people probably got really hyped about No Man's Sky, is because it was different. Like, no one's created a game of that like that scale before. It was a really cool concept, and whether it was executed well or not is debated a lot, and I'm not really going to get into that because there's already been too much debate on it. But I think that that's what might have developed a lot of that hype, is because it was a new thing. You know, it was this new thing that hadn't been done before. And, yeah.
Yeah. So I know, Nick, you put out so many like little games, and some of them have been covered by like all the huge YouTubers too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that.
Poop.
Yeah, why is it always about poop? Bunch of shitty games.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, I guess like because.
Oh.
Thank you. I hear that pun every single day in your comments.
It's just us.
Anyway, like, yeah, when it comes. God damn it. You all these dupe accounts.
Yeah.
That's all you do all day. You're not developing the site. You're just
Actually,
making accounts and spamming me. But yeah, so I haven't really been making stuff now, but I'd say back 2014, 2013, I used to be involved in atomic jams. And jams are great because they give you a theme, and with the Lum Dare, it's voted by the community, and you can get some really interesting themes out of it, some really obscure ones, and you just kind of just like, what? Another one I do is Indie Speedrun, which gives you a theme and an element. So like I got a theme of Persian and an element of rug. And so I made a game where you're like an Aladdin dude flying through a Persian temple. And I was just like, and then half a year later they released Flappy Bird, which was exactly the same. And I'm just like,
Well, clearly.
You stole it. Well, anyway, just like, and it just like making like short jam games and stuff. You can get some really cool ideas out of it. And then I feel like the YouTubers who've covered some of the bigger ones spend more time making the video, promoting it, and have just the buzz in general from them is more effort than I put into making them, which just proves that if you have a really cool idea, no matter the scale of it, whether it's just pressing up and down, increasing a counter, it can attract a ton of attention.
I think in terms of what the topic was actually about, like, is indie still indie? Like,
So
the term indie has, I think, changed a lot since its origins. Like, with the community growing so much and teams developing, like, you've got teams of, say, 20 people, which are still considered indie.
Yeah.
Like what's the transition between indie and AAA? Like,
It's kind of weird because, like, what now indie means, oh, I used to work at a AAA studio as, like, some director, but I decided to go indie now, so I put together a team of 20 people and got funding from an indie publisher. Like...
Yeah. Whereas you've still got groups of two. Or, like, even just
so, I
one
mean,
person
you know, I'm
who are
fine
also indie.
with them calling it whatever they want, I guess. But, like, the indie that I wanted to, I guess, dedicate a chunk of my life to trying to grow was not that. Like, it was the people that pulled open, like, found Game Maker because it was called Game Maker, and that's what they searched for. And...
That's how I found it.
Yeah, I searched in Google how to make games.
Nobody ever searches how to construct a game, right? Anyway, so yeah, like that person that probably did it as a kid, you know, kid being like, you know, some teenager, because they've played, you know, because they love Zelda, they love Overwatch and all that stuff, and then they're like, now I want to make games, so then they make some games about poop, right? Like.
Yep.
Oi.
But that's like, that to me is what's amazing. Like, it's, and I think what people aren't getting, and I'm almost worried if, like, this is getting lost now because of this muddying of, like, terms and whatever, is there was something kind of, like, magical about that, you know, and there still is, where you kind of, like, once you find this world exists, it's really freaking weird, and you get inspired yourself, right? Like, it just seems so, like, if we can do it, you can do it, kind of thing.
we can make a shitty game, you can make a shitty game.
You know, and then...
That should be my new catchphrase.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's getting lost now with now indie games having to almost appear more to the mainstream audience rather than taking the mainstream audience and pulling them into indie games, the indie world.
And, like, let's not pretend that all games are about poop. Like, there's some really like soul touching, like, there's some like shorter games that make you cry, you know, like, just really, like, just get you and
Speechless.
yeah, speechless. Get you speechless. There we go. English is my second language, so I can.
You were speechless yourself.
Yeah.
That Dragon Cancer
Which game?
is a good example of that. That's like a really powerful, that Dragon Cancer. It's a really, like, powerful experience. Like, as soon as you hear what that game is about, and you start, like, going through, like, I didn't play it, I watched it on YouTube.
No, there's so many games like that. Like, even
It's some pretty heavy feels in that game.
But I mean, there's even, like, kind of like these underground indie games too. Like, if you look at the comments on Presentable Liberty on Game Jolt, like, people are going, like, every single one is like, this has affected me. Like, I can't stop thinking about it, you know? Or,
Like, Mark Plyer was crying when he was playing that game.
yeah, and it's like this small kind of underground indie game that, or it's not small now. You know, a lot of YouTubers played it, so it covered, which is amazing. And then also stuff like, I think A Normal Lost Phone, which is like about, you find a phone on the ground and you have to kind of intrude on this person's life by figuring out puzzles to like learn about the story of this person, which is like a coming out story of them being transgendered, right? So it's really powerfully done, and it's very short. But I think that's like the magical, or sometimes it's just like a mechanic that you're like, whoa, that was insanely fun. Like,
Eggnog.
yeah, eggnog. Good old eggnog. And yeah, so like, whatever. I guess it's like rambling, but, or maybe even more like a rant, but I don't know. I don't want to see like the indie community or industry just think that the games that can be relevant to gamers nowadays are the ones that are bigger, like that Dragon Cancer even, which I would say is actually a fairly large scale indie game now. Yeah, so
Yeah, it did blow up a bit.
that there's actually a world out there of like kind of individuals or normal people, small teams that are just like doing really cool stuff.
There was one that was featured on Game Jolt, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about Syrian refugees.
Sorry.
I thought there was more coming.
That kind of thing is really cool. I really like that about the indie scene at the moment, is people are taking games away from this pure fun factor and are instead using games to create experiences and present different ideas to people. I think there's something really powerful about that too. Like it's cool that we can create these experiences because it's a new way to show people what things are like from other people's perspective. Like I know in Australia and likely a lot of other countries, like there's a lot of people who are very much against refugees because they just don't seem to understand that these people are running for their lives. But like that's just an example of like one thing that games can be used for to depict other ideas across to people. It's just like, yeah, you bring awareness, and I mean really like you're using games to
I don't think
let's change the world.
Personally, I don't think there's any other format or medium that allows you to actually like put yourself in the position of another, quite like games. So they're actually like really powerful tools in art, I think. Take you out of your own place in life and put you somewhere else.
Yeah, it takes you out of like your comfort zone, and it makes you face some of the challenges. Like games have a way of making you make actual decisions that have consequences, at least within the game. Like not necessarily real life consequences, but you see the way some of your decisions affect things, which is I think sort of what makes them so good at putting across points and different ideas, because rather than just sitting there and watching a movie and having things told to you, you're forced to actually make decisions and like make choices.
By the way, that Syrian refugee game is called That Day We Left by Innovoid.
All right, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate then. So how a lot of developers want to make game making into a career, right? So how would you explain to them that you can monetize and support yourself and your projects with these shorter games versus seeking funding from, like incubators and indie publishers and things like that?
I think a lot of developers are just too too ambitious, to be honest, and I don't blame them. I'm so ambitious as well. They just need to learn to, frankly, just cut down on their idea. Like, I'd say jams are so good, just little jams, and I don't like. I'd say a lot more people are making jams and getting them out there, but I still don't think it's like a jam revolution. I feel like there's just a jam for everything, and every now and then there's like a jam that gets everyone's attention. That's because it's by someone big or a big
for a specific
which
cause.
is why I think the last thing I said before we went into the segment, I think it matters a lot to me. So I think the best thing we can do is to I think gamers should be okay paying lower amounts of money for games and then being short. I don't think we need like really, really long games for, all the time. And I think gamers don't, like, if a game is worth $3, $5, because, how long it took to make, really, and how long, I guess it is. That should be okay for a gamer. Like, it should be more common, I think, if, especially in the indie world. Like, that's what I'd like to be seeing more of. And I think sites like Game Jolt and Itch are actually really good for that, right? Like, two sites that are actually, like, really promoting that idea, I'd say, of shorter, smaller form games that are experimental and stuff are okay and amazing, and gamers should buy them, even. And I think that the bigger indies, and not even just indies, but like we should be trying to push press. We should be trying to push anything we can to be like looking at these smaller games. And I don't think it's going to work really without some of the more prominent people.
And this is not a foreign concept, right? Like, I mean, mobile games are anywhere from like 50 cents to a couple dollars. So, like, people are paying money for shorter games already.
I think there's this gap between mobile and like PC and console. Like, people expect small games on mobile, I think more because of the hardware limitations. Like, you don't have the graphics power in mobile, and people know that. So they don't expect big games.
Yeah, I kind of...
Right now. I'm not saying that they should expect big games on PC, because games can be big on PC. I don't think that's a good concept to have at all, but I think that might be one cause of people being more accepting of these smaller games.
I think the pricing too is even not that friendly, because it's almost so bad that you have to charge less than $3 or something, right? What happens when your game, could be $5, could be $10, could be like whatever. Just because there's like maybe made for like the lowest common denominator of gamers. A little bit more casual as well, that like they're not going to be looking for that kind of experience too. They're going to be looking for the thing that's either free and ad-based or $2 that they're going to pay, and it's going to be addicting, and that's all they really care about.
I think kind of a bad attitude has been developed towards game pricing. Like, I've seen many cases where an indie game is being sold for, say, $15 because it took like 3 years to make or something, but the game itself is only like an hour or two long, and people get really mad. I think people have developed this idea that they're paying for entertainment time versus the work of the people that went into making it. Like, if you work a casual job or a part-time job, you're getting paid for the time that you spend doing the job. Whereas with games, it seems that people aren't willing to pay for the time that people spent on it, and only willing to pay for the content or the amount of time that they spend playing. Which is understandable in a sense, but I'm not sure if that's
Well, there's like
a good attitude
you see
to have
both sides of it, right? You see some games that really shouldn't cost like $10 or
Yeah.
more. Like it's just a very simple game. It's very short, and there's not a lot of mechanics or things that you can do in the game. So I get that from the gamer's perspective, but then there's also there's some games that maybe are like 30 minutes, but it's really intense, and you can tell that like a lot of work has gone into it, and it costs like 10, 15, $20, whatever. And I think it's totally reasonable to pay that much for the quality of work. And I think going back to mobile games, people are now associating short games with mobile games. So they're associating the pricing as well. So they're saying like, if I pay, like $1.99 for Flappy Bird or whatever, why is this game on Game Jolt like $5? And I think that's where its quality is what they need to consider.
It's like, this game is only an hour long, why did I pay $10 for it? It's like, if it's an hour long, but what the game does is pretty huge. Like, the amount of work that went into it is huge. There's definitely like a sort of blurred line between where pricing should be or where people think it should be versus like the content or the amount of time you spend playing it or the amount of work that went into it. I think people need to try to think about all those factors before getting super mad about paying $10 for like a 1 hour game. It's like, as you said, like there are times where games are more expensive than they should be, but I've seen a lot of times where people get angry for a game being $15. But I mean, in my personal view, I can't speak for everyone, that game is worth 15 if not more. But that's also like, we've got different perspectives to your average player, like we make games where the people putting in the work, whereas they're the consumers. So I think that perspective difference also has a pretty big factor in the opinions.
And that's it. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast. We know today's episode was pretty late, but hopefully you still enjoyed it. Let us know if you want to see more of these, and if so, who do you want us to talk to, and what do you want us to talk about? If you're interested in coming on, let us know. Comment section below, send us an email at contact@gamejolt.com. Once again, thank you very much. Hope to see you on the site.